Hello, comrades. Commissar Bro here today with Realpolitiks. That's right. This game was just released today and is an interesting geopolitical strategy game. Yes, that's right. Now, I'm not going to lie. When I first saw this game, I'm like, OMG, this is about to be the new Superpower 2. And was super, super excited about it. And now that I've gotten to sit down and play a little bit of it, I have a pretty interesting opinion of it thus far. So I'm going to try to go through some of the cool stuff about the game and some of the stuff that I'm not so much of a fan of, because there's definitely two things in there for that. So, starting with, who do we want to add? Oh my, we could add Brazil, or we could add the Republic of California. So you probably want some explanation of what's going on. Alright, well there's a lot of different mechanics, and I won't add anyone to my stock market just yet, because I'm going to attempt to explain this game to you as best as I possibly can. So, this game is a geopolitical strategy game, as mentioned previously, and this particular scenario we're playing is one of three different scenarios, this being the 2050 scenario, basically post-World War III. And the world has been split up into a bunch of different little countries, so it's kind of like a Shattered States alternate future type mod. Well, not mod, but scenario. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So, like, we can see that, like, Poland has been united with Romania and Hungary and Belarus and Ukraine to create the Intermarium. And then you've got, like, Germany's been split in two between South Germany and Germany, and France and the Netherlands and Belgium has been, and parts of Germany and Luxembourg have been turned into Europia. And, you've got southern France. You have a whole bunch of different countries that have been split up or rearranged to show basically the change in power structure with the fall of the old world powers. Now, most of the old world powers are still there. They're just, they're weakened, far, far weaker than they were before. I kind of like this mode because it more evenly distributes power through a bunch of different countries rather than just your usual United States, Russia, so on and so forth, or China. So it's pretty cool that they're doing that. Like, for example, Iran and Turkey and Arabia are actually some pretty powerful countries that you need to be careful for. Like, for example, Arabia has a larger population than the main United States does. And Turkey does too. So it's interesting. It's an interesting take on it. Basically, the idea being that with the United States having been split up into three different countries and having been the victim of a very massive war, their populations are smaller, their economies are smaller, and as such, they're not doing so well. I also like the idea that the United States has been split up into three different countries. It's always fun to play these little alternate history scenarios in various, geopolitical strategy games. Currently, I'm playing as the Confederacy, who actually turns out is a bit stronger of an economic power than the United States is. But the United States has a larger military, so it's up to you to kind of compete with that. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have to talk about if most of this is going to actually make any real amount of sense to you. So, not only do we have militaries and all sorts, we have various tabs that show us a lot of different details about our country. Taking a look at specifically our country, the Confederacy, we can see that we have elections. We are a democratic nation. The political system is determined in these little bars here, basically depending on the various let's say, technologies that you research and various social issues that occur throughout your country every few years. This is what system is going to come into power. You'll have events that kind of change those systems as you move more towards authoritarianism, totalitarianism, or democracy, and so on. There's interventionism as well, which shows how willing you are to get involved with the world. Being the Confederacy, we have a very low interventionism. And there's a variety of things that occur because of that. So like +3 unemployment, +1 bureaucracy, but +2 to pro-agricultural market policies, and +1 to labor laws. Basically having the effects of such as increasing our GDP growth, increasing the minimum amount of taxes that can be charged, and the maximum amount of taxes that can be charged, increasing the amount of debt we have, I suppose, and increasing the cost of projects. Most of the actions in this game are actually done through the projects tab, which is right down here, this little light bulb. You don't really control your economy directly. You don't really control infrastructure construction manually like you would in games like Supreme Ruler or even Superpower 2 to a degree. So you'll see that you'll have these different tabs right over here that you can choose different projects that have varying effects. So, for example, let's go to the military one. We've got arms production and trade, which is a bare minimum, which allows us to build, aside from just infantry, it allows us to build armor, aircraft, and navies. Going further down the line, we can see that we can get like vehicles manufacturing, which decreases recruitment cost of tanks. If we go further down the line, we can get all the way down to universal tanks and Mark III tanks, which increase our armor, as you can see here, and increase, basically just increase your armor, attack, and so on and so forth. Their attack modifier being really the only determinant in combat, which we will discuss a little bit as we move along. So as you can see, it's a pretty simplistic system. It's a pretty extensive list of basically researching policies. You only research 2 at a time. I actually kind of wish you could get up to 3, or you could increase your project research capacity, because that sure would make it a lot more interesting. I don't know if you can. Again, this is my first time playing the game, so I'm pretty much doing this more as kind of a first impressions video rather than a full-on review, because again, I have not played the game to its entirety. But again, as far as I can tell, there's only 2 projects you can be researching at any given time. But there's plenty of projects to research for you to kind of customize your country as much as you want, even going so far as researching pornography prohibition and having a morality office, having religious laws and religious order. So basically, you can put your nation down the line of a theocracy, essentially, which will lead you further down from democracy and further to totalitarianism and so on. So it's interesting that you have these various projects that you can research. Smaller countries, less developed countries, are going to have a tougher time. And that's something that actually, I guess, can be said about this game, but we'll go into that a little bit later. So wars are an interesting concept in this game. They're very simplistic starting off. They're not complicated in the least. And I'm actually going to go to war with the Republic of California to prove this point to you. So let's just go ahead and jump. Well, actually, I'm going to save it first. Let me save my game, so in case I mess up. And so we're just going to call this one high. Yeah, call that a new save. Wonderful. Okay, the save's been made. So let's go to war with the Republic of California, and we can kind of take a look, see at how wars work. I'm going to tell you right now, wars are incredibly simplistic. You do have such, declaration effects as warmonger, other countries viewing you as an asshole, pretty much. This does decrease your relations with the country you're declaring war on, obviously. And it also affects population growth, army maintenance, and war losses. Basically, further on, affecting your GDP growth and all manner of different factors. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and throw all of our army into the fight. I'm not too concerned with holding back units. I pretty much want to overwhelm the Californians as depthly as possible. So going straight into the war, we have an advantage. Let's click here. Well, or here. Make my little tab pull up. Maybe I got to press play first. There we go. All right. So as you can see, the war is now being conducted. Everything in the war is conducted through this screen. You don't actually control it manually like you would in Supreme Ruler or Superpower 2. Basically, what you do is you assign operations from this list, of which you get war score for winning various objectives, which puts you down the path of being able to defeat your enemy. But you've also got deadliness, which is how many units you'll probably lose doing it. The redder it is, the better it is. So you don't really want to do that. Let's take a look, see if we have any high chances of accomplishing anything on this list, and not really. We could supply line capture. That gives us a pretty good chance of success. Or we could do a breakthrough. Let's do a breakthrough as an initial operation to use against our opponents to see how we do there. We'll put it on double speed to increase. As you can see, our opponents are doing ambush actions. We're about to see if this actually works or not. This green bar shows if we're winning the engagement. The red bar shows if the enemy is winning the engagement. As our dudes are not having a very good chance, it doesn't look like we're going to. We are having some additional events happen, but I'm going to recently arrived here seeking asylum. What would she do? Refuse. I'm not going to get bad relations. It seems like we're not having a very good chance with breaking through the enemy formation, and they're actually kind of beating our ass, which is disturbing and depressing. Oh my. The conquest, this I haven't got to. Space colonization. The conquest of the universe must continue. For space colonies, we can gain a huge edge over our enemies. Start the funding project. Alright, so this is something else you're going to see in the game. It's called funding, and it happens with the, what's it called? With basically the Olympics. That's what it's called. I don't know why I had such a hard time remembering that name. But like the Olympics, and trying to eliminate world hunger. It's these big events that you pour a crap ton of money into, but you get a huge score or you get some sort of benefit. In this particular case, if we throw a bunch of money in, we have an opportunity to gain control of a planet outside of Earth, putting colonies on another planet or moon. So that's pretty cool. I like that. All right, so let's see how we're doing in our war. Okay, so we're still fighting in the Great Basin. We're doing a little bit better. And it looks like our spies were caught trying to do something, but whatever. I don't care all that much. We have a -1 to armor because of desert. That's interesting. But because of the operation, I think their side has +4 to infantry and +2 to armor. No wonder they're doing so effectively against us, and they are really pounding us right now. So no bueno. Prison riots. There's been a massive riot in one of our larger prisons. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. So things are occurring. We're going to pay money to overhaul those buildings. And it looks like we are literally going to lose the fight trying to break through the Californians' forces because of their ambush actions. These are pretty much countering our attacks, which it's working pretty damn well for them. We've actually lost more than we've killed. We've lost like 5 armor. Okay, so that's really not working for us. But come on, there we go. We're making a comeback. So basically, this is how wars are fought. Quite simply, it's not complicated at all. How it works. I don't understand why I'm losing so many men trying to break through the enemy position here. We've again lost like 6 tanks already. That's no bueno at all. But thankfully, you can increase the size of your army by going to the military tab right here, clicking the plus. You go to buy, and then it gives you a certain limitation of units you can buy at that time. We're going to buy 8 tanks to replace all the tanks we've lost. It's going to take us 158 days to build them, and it's going to cost this many resources to get them there as well. Galaxy exploration. We are leading the other countries right now in galaxy exploration. We have 627 days to complete that, so that's pretty cool. What else should we get more infantry? It almost looks to me like we should get more aircraft or something. Those seem to be doing all right. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and build 4 more aircraft because why not? So let's click back on the war. How are we doing? Well, we're apparently trying to break through on the moon and not having a lot of success. The Republic of California apparently owns property on the moon. What is that? Is that them right there? I guess that's... I don't really know. Let's see. Actually, I think that was. Let me click back on that. Maybe not. That one's not having anything. But the Oceanic Confederation owns a space station out there. Where is the moon? I don't see it. Maybe I'm just blind. Whatever. It's not that important. Anyway, I thought this was the moon, right? Well, is that the moon? No, Canada owns that. Whatever the hell that is. As you can tell, I'm not very familiar with planets and shit. So, Canada owns it, though. Whatever that is. If that is the moon, or not the moon. It looks like the moon. I can kind of see craters. I can't tell. My eyes are terrible. The important part here is we are fighting on the moon. Now we're back to fighting in Chihuahua and the Great Plains. And we're actually winning. Oh, come on. Give me that. Give me that. Yeah, we won our military operations against the Californians. It took us a lot of fighting, but we managed to succeed. So that's a war. That's literally a war. That's how it's fought. That's how it's accomplished. It's not really complicated. It's kind of simplistic, in my opinion, rather than giving me direct control, which is kind of what I would like. I understand it to a degree, and I mean it's not that bad. It's an interesting mechanic, to say the least. Wow. Oh, okay, I was about to say they automatically won that. I was like, dear God. Militarism target, intervention side with the, go with the military sector. Sweet. Always increase militarism points. Make my army more effective. Oh my God, I'm taking so many. Oh my God, I'm taking so many casualties. Stop it. Oh, that hurt my soul. But yeah. So this is basically a war. So what's some cool features in this game? Well, you got stock markets. That's actually something I'm going to go with right now. We're going to talk about the stock markets instead of watching my troops die en masse trying to penetrate the Republic of California's line. So the stock exchange is an interesting mechanic that essentially, it's just a money increaser. It basically modifies your country in various ways. Mainly, predominantly, affecting how much money you make. And you having a larger share of the world market, essentially, like your stock market world power, is incredibly beneficial to you having a strong, powerful economy. So we're going to add Brazil to our economy because Brazil is super rich, or we can add the intermarium. I think we'll add Brazil. Brazil seems to make a bit more money. And basically, you see now we're competing against other countries and their stock markets. We're being beat out by Scandinavia. I don't really know what all countries are in there, but they're a pretty strong one. I used to have the United States inside of my stock market, thus generating me a metric ton of money, but the United States opened up their own stock market. It's really expensive to open up your own stock market. It's like 10,000 money, basically 10,000 gold or whatever they want to call it in this game. So it's pretty expensive, and it's worthwhile, though. I mean, you're going to make a lot of money off of it, and you accrue money on a monthly basis. As you can see right now, we're getting 45 plus, and the number's just growing on our stock exchange there, up to 50, 60. It's just going to keep getting higher, depending on your GDP growth. Oh, did we win? Sweet. We won. But we're out of tanks. They literally blew up all of our effing tanks. So we have no more tanks, except the ones that we just built. So thankfully, we popped those guys in there. But the enemy is still kind of kicking our ass, and we're not doing a very good job of beating them, which is kind of embarrassing because we came into this fight with a more technologically advanced army, a much bigger army, and honestly, I feel like we should have won. We should have been winning this whole thing. Let's bomb them. Let's bomb airstrike, armor destruction. Let's just bomb the crap out of them and call it a day. Anti-democratic cooperation. My, oh my, it's just not my day. Or well, at least I'm not democratic anymore. I'm authoritarian as far as I know. So one last mechanic that's kind of worth talking about in this game is the United Nations. The way the United Nations works in this game is proposals come up every so often. And cadence is coming to an end in 165 days. Okay, well, that's interesting. You have a list of various things that you can choose, like dirty energy tax, which decreases GDP growth across the world. Support minorities, which basically those are your effects. Self-determination act, so on and so forth. There's all sorts of different acts, and it kind of shows you how much support you're going to need to get it done. And basically right now we just got passed as an anti-democratic cooperation act passed by the United Nations. Who controls the United Nations are the top 12 GDP countries. So basically we're in there, the United States is in there, the Intermarium, Republic of California, so on. And they're the ones who really choose the direction of the world, and smaller countries just have to go with it. They don't really get a choice in the matter, which is not really true to life, because let's be honest, all votes are worth the same. There is the Security Council, which has a pretty heavy vote, but all things said and done, ultimately it's not totally true to life to how things are. So, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting mechanic. I actually really like it. You can even lobby for stuff that you propose in the United Nations, so that's really cool. I like that feature. But overall, it's all right. It's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it. It makes sense to a degree. It just seems very simplistic. So that, with most of the features kind of talked about and mentioned at this point, that kind of brings us to my feelings on the games, my real impressions of the games thus far after all this time I've put into it, which isn't a whole bunch, mind you, maybe a couple of hours in all. It's an interesting game. It's a very interesting take on geopolitical simulations. It's very simplistic. I mean, there is nuclear war and stuff like that for countries that have it. There are major effects that can occur because of nuclear war, so that's pretty cool. I actually kind of like that feature. But some of the features feel simplistic. The project system, for example, you can right-click, right, and you can build certain infrastructure. But it's so simple. I would prefer to have direct control over what I'm building, like having buildings that can increase my GDP or major commercial centers or something like that, anything like that, rather than just having to rely on projects which take forever to actually do. I mean, years. Half of them take 2 or 3 years. The later tier stuff takes you 5, 6 years to get implemented. So it nothing moves fast, essentially. You can't get a whole lot done in a short period of time. Look at this. Infrastructure 2 takes 470 days. This up here, protectionist agricultural market, takes 563 days. It kind of forces you to spec into one thing, and that's what you do, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, mind you, but it does seem kind of simplistic, I guess. I can understand if they're trying to limit you from being able to research all of the options. That makes sense, sure. But at the same time, trying to get to some of the good stuff takes a lot of time and effort. For example, this tiny little plus 2% tax bonus takes you roughly 1,500 days to get. I mean, that's 5 years just to get a 2% tax increase. If you go over here to Economy Modernization 4, that's only an increase of 427 action points, which I generate those in 4 months. Less than 4 months, really. Economy Modernization 5, GDP growth plus 30%. Now, that's a big bonus. But to get there takes you decades, if not 2 decades, just to get to it. And that's pure on focusing this line. You can't speed it up because you got to research this to get to that. So it's not going to go any faster than what you've already got. And this is the same thing applies to most of these things. Like, look at the times of implementation it's going to take to get to this. And then you have to worry about the costs. Like, some of the costs are astronomical. Like, these costs aren't that bad. You can pretty much get that project, bam, slam, bam, thank you, man, you're good to go. But, like, trying to get to hyperspeed corridors, I get it would probably be pretty expensive, but it's $16,000. I only generate $487 a month, not counting the wars I'm fighting and all the other money I'm spending here or there. I just don't have the money to do it. So it's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I like it. I like the idea of it, but I feel like in a few places it's not entirely as good as it could be. It's not perfect. I feel like having more slots would alleviate a lot of this problem. I feel like you would be able to get more done. I feel like you could change a bit more of your country. Playing as smaller countries, you're incredibly inhibited because you don't have as much GDP, you don't have as much money. You really just can't do near as much as the bigger countries. Another feature that's kind of missing that would have been pretty cool is maybe a multiplayer feature. It doesn't have to be like, you know, big Paradox type games where you have like 32 players or so on, something like that, but it sure would be nice to at least be able to compete with like maybe one other person to accomplish stuff like that. I mean, that would be pretty cool. But that's, again, something that's not in this game. There's no multiplayer. So expecting to get help from another country is slim, because they're probably not going to want you that badly. The question kind of becomes, why are some of these systems so simple, I guess? I mean, there was a lot of promise here. I mean, this game is pretty fun overall. It's pretty fun. It's not bad at all. But there's a lot of things that could just be done better. And I guess that's wherein lies my whole issue with the game, honestly. That's pretty much my only issue, is I feel like it's a bit too simple. It doesn't really explore some of the things that it could explore, and I feel like it went for more streamlined interface, which is understandable and not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, I guess, kind of disappointing in a way. Again, I was kind of hoping this would take the route of kind of Superpower 2, being a mixture of simplistic, but also being really fun. Like being a little complex in different ways. What made Superpower 2 complex was really its governmental systems, how they interplayed off of each other, how they worked. What made Supreme Ruler interesting, although it was incredibly complicated, was just the fact that you could do so much, like especially the economic system. It was an in-depth economic system that you could do a lot of playing around with, and effects that you made early on could bring your country to its knees if you did it wrong or if you weren't careful. So there's stuff like that, you know, I guess it kind of makes me like those games a bit more than this one. But again, this is still just a very early look at the game. I haven't really put that much time into it, so I could just be missing features that are indeed here. But I don't know. I think, honestly, one of the most underwhelming portions of the game is the military system. It's not horrible. It's very simple. I just kind of wish there was more details on how it all worked. It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense in certain respects, and a lot of it's up to RNG, which is a shame. I would prefer to have at least some amount of control of how my troops are performing, aside from just throwing more men into the meat grinder. I mean, doing that, it hardly seems like a strategy game. It seems like I'm just having to rely on, like, the weather to be bad, or I'm relying on the randomness of the enemy unit counters to just get destroyed or something, rather than making a more technologically advanced unit which dominates the enemy. Because, I mean, even Superpower 2 has a lot of RNG, but there's more in-depth stats on how all the units work. And I guess it just makes it a little bit more understandable, I suppose. I don't know. All in all, it's not a bad game. It's only $18 right now. That's actually a pretty that's a monumental price for what's amounts to be a geopolitical simulation game. Most of these games start out, when they first come out, they tend to be pretty expensive because they don't have a large target market. So it's interesting that they're going with that route on basically selling their game for really cheap. A really fair price, honestly. And for the amount, the actual price itself, I would recommend it for that alone. It's an interesting game, and I can definitely see myself sinking time into it. I guess that's kind of my thing here. I know I keep rambling on, but I feel like that's kind of it for me. I'm definitely going to give it a bit of a try more and continue to play it, and who knows, maybe I'll do a couple videos here or there really exploring the game more in depth, because again, there's a lot of things I'm probably missing or I just don't know all that much about as is. So, I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, this has been Commissar Bro. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you are interested in this game. I definitely am. I mean, it's not the best geopolitical simulation game I've ever played, but it's definitely a fun one. It's not bad. It's got some interesting mechanics, and it does it in a very streamlined fashion, and that's probably the best thing about it. It's all very streamlined, and it plays very well. No crashes, no problems like that. It's well done. It's just not, it's kind of shallow. It's not as in-depth as it could be. It seems like a great starter game to really get you into the genre. If you're into geopolitical strategy games, that is. It's a great place to start. So anyway, this has been Commissar Bro, and I'll catch you guys next time.